About a month ago I discovered a tool to randomize Diablo 2. Using this tool by Mayprun you can randomize whatever you want. You can increase monster density, item drops, random mods, you name it, this tool's got it. It's by far the best randomizer I found so far, so I put the link in the description down below for everyone to try it out. I figured that I'd start off by making the game a bit harder on myself. I've been wanting to revisit some builds and this gives me a perfect excuse to do so. After fiddling around with the randomizer I discovered that if you go for 10 times enemies the game will just consistently crash. It's also bloody impossible to clear it. So I ended up putting it at double the enemy density and double the boss packs. I mean, how hard could it be? So let's see how far I get. I start off with a Paladin because this way I get to use Holy Fire through the early parts of normal. I only need level 6 to get there, which is easier said than done. I run off into the Bloodborne and the very first thing I encounter is a double champion pack of fetishes and skeletons. All I can say is that I'm happy I didn't go for players 8 on this run. All of this was recorded on the players 1 player setting, because I figured with twice as many enemies there shouldn't be a problem with getting experience and levels. After beating those, I'm immediately attacked by a boss pack of Cursed Fetish and a pack of raids, followed up by some Conviction KFC escapees. And just a reminder, this is the Bloodborne on normal, the first area of the game, so this challenge might pose to be a bit more tricky than I had imagined. I end up having to run to the cold plains and resetting the game so the scary packs will leave me alone, as I encounter pit lords and demon knights accompanied by their friends Stygian dolls. So I end up resetting again just to try and roll into some weaker boss packs because I'll need it. First reroll went fine, I stomped some spiky squirrels. Second one I made it into the stony field, but there I encountered the Wordstone Keep class of 69, which forced me back into the cold plains again. Obviously the run where I go for Holy Fire is the one where I encounter my first fire immune in the Black Marsh in normal, because why wouldn't the game just screw me like that? Luckily this is so early in the game that I can still just melee the guy. I end up trying to make my way to the outer cloister waypoint first. Usually this is completely free. It's a very empty area and usually just walk right over there. With the waypoint secured, it is time to get into the tower. This is where you farm because there are a lot of boss packs and this run is no different. I am greeted by Spearwoman and almost end up getting killed right then and there. At the tower level 5 I am happily surprised to encounter a pack of Cow Kings. Glad to see they are grazing all around the world now instead of their own little designated spot. The Countess herself is the same by the way, the bosses aren't changed, the mod can't do that. I don't know if it's in the pipelines or anything, but I'm very happy with it for now, because having a bit of downtime during this run is very welcome. And you can't really tell from the footage, but this was all so dense and so intense with the monsters that I needed to take a break after an hour or two. We end up getting the first try stealth in one run by the way. I decided to farm for some more runes. Well, that is until the game said no. I wanted more runes to make things nice for myself, but the game decided that Oblivion Knights casting lower resist and souls were a much better plan for the second level of the tower. That is one of the hardest combinations of monsters in the game to beat. We got it in the tower in normal. Instead of the smith we get a fanaticism pack of Lord of the Rings refugees, but Holy Fire is really showing its power at this point and we start making it through areas without too many problems. That is, until I got to the jail level 3. I can get dolls in any area of the game now, and honestly, I hate this. Why do I do this to myself? Catacombs level 4 is also still filled with the undead, too bad it's souls instead of some pretty easy zombies. And after making it through the souls we clear out Andariel very easy, cause beating Andariel with a fire based character is just completely free. And you know what, I felt proud for beating Act 1, it sounds silly, but this was much harder than I expected it to be. In Act 2 I'm still running around with Holy Fire, causing global warming everywhere at this point, as demonstrated here by the Yetis living in the desert, and the cows also figured out that me running around with Holy Fire isn't good for their supply of grass on the ground, so I'm being hunted down by them as well. I end up ducking into the Halls of the Dead, which is very aptly named, because if I'm not careful with these cursed moonlords I will become a very permanent fixture of it. Cursed moonlords are usually stuff that you encounter in Act 5 Nightmare at the very earliest. Act 5 Nightmare, Act 2 Normal, it's the same thing, you know, just easy peasy. With the packs of angry bovines and minotaur defeated, I make my way into the maggot lair, which is actually not that different at all, except for the part where I encounter Oblivion Knights and more moonlords. Having to fight them in here is actually better in some ways, because you can't get surrounded by them. To keep up with the 1 fire immune per act treaty of 1542, I end up defeating Fire Eye, who drops me a Morning Star. The Arcane Sanctuary was a very mixed bag as well. On the one hand, I had spots like these where I could just wait for my Holy Fire to take down the enemies. Those moments of sheer bliss were followed up with an insane round of dodgeball where I needed to survive until the holy fire did its job. And after that it's time for Duriel, which honestly is the relaxing part of the act this time around. Yeah, I'm not kidding. This is the kind of run where Duriel is the easy part. In Act 3 the holy fire is really getting into the full swing of things, and most of the things I encounter die very quickly. Except for this one little pack over here, very aptly named Hell Lords. The rest of the force was harmless though, except for the cows and the might dolls that were everywhere. After making it through that hellscape of a forest, I realized that the souls and dolls had just wandered up the stairs from the sewers. Kurast was even worse than the forest. It started out with dolls and then followed it up with some more souls. So far, every area in Act 3 has had dolls. It is rare that I have a realization that I so profoundly know that I could do without and hope to never have again. One thing I hadn't realized yet is that the randomizer even uses cut enemies. I encounter plague bugs for the first time in my life, although I fully understand why they were cut. They are just a bunch of mosquitoes that they forgot to give a color to. Heading up to the council, it is time to say goodbye to our aura of free wins as we respec into hammers. So we spec into strength for gear and some points into dex as well for the block rate. It's not relevant yet, but if you keep putting 1 to 2 points per level into dexterity, you'll very easily have max block once you get starting into Holy Shield. You can adjust course by putting in 3 to 5 points if you're short when Holy Shield kicks in, or you can just stop putting in dex for a while if you overshot. For skills we get into Blast Hammer. It's one of the strongest specs in the game, which we'll need for this run. Be careful though, the synergies are very deceiving here. You want to use Blast Hammer with concentration, so max those two first. After that you want to pump either Holy Shield if you want to be defensive, or the synergies if you want to deal more damage. I tend to go for synergies first, but that's cause going more glass cannon makes for better content. So your mileage may vary. The council itself isn't that different. They've made some new friends, but that's kinda it, so we destroy them without too much trouble. And the same goes for Mephisto, he's a total cakewalk now. The increase in density is the most notable part in Act 4. It just feels like playing your character through a pile of mud and deadly bricks for every single area. There's just so much going on. One thing I will need to point out though is that how hard it is to see dolls in Act 4. I'm kind of glad they have the fanaticism aura on them, cause that way at least I know where they are. Too bad that means that there are fanaticism dolls with Isual, which is a problem. Despite having twice the amount of enemies, I'm really not finding any good gear, which is very disappointing. So I end up using some diamonds to socket a shield for some resist. At the Hellforge I find an odd rune, which together with a very conveniently dropped 3 socket shields makes the shield I made in the previous scene useless immediately. I think the game just knows it's always the same. You finally cobble together some shitty item after working your ass off for it for hours, and the game just immediately shits on all your trouble to get it by dropping you something better. The Chaos Sanctuary, while being very dense, actually isn't too bad. It's a nice open area and I end up finding an Am rune in there as well. I'm just a thal away from a spirit at this point. After making short work of Diablo, I move it along to Act 5, where Eldritch makes me very happy with some seriously insane boots. Even though the sorts of mobs are a bit different, Act 5 doesn't feel too abnormal to be honest. Very full, but nothing that much out of the ordinary. Act 5 always has a higher number of different monsters in it. The other thing it doesn't change is that the Bloodlords are any less dangerous. Those things still hit like a truck. Act 1 through 4 have 3 different types of monsters at all times. Act 5 has 4 chosen from a bigger pool than the other acts, so it's a bit less impactful here, but it's still very dense. Lister however feels like a total cakewalk after all the misery that I've just been through, so we kill him and move onwards to Bale, who strangely enough is not as much of a pushover as I expected him to be. He still hits hard a couple of times but does end up going down. And with that we have beaten the game with twice as many enemies and boss packs, and I have become Destroyer Kaioken times 2. After beating one of the hardest runs in this game I have ever done. Wait, Destroyer? What? Fuck, this was only normal, god damn it. Well, time to get into Nightmare I suppose. I mean, I'm honestly scared here. Normal was harder than most of the hell runs I've done. So anyway, let's go. I end up getting the best den of evil you could ever imagine, with half the things in there blowing themselves up and the other half running straight into my hammers. Things are going smooth, so I decide to just push through up to the counters to farm some stuff. Spoiler, it was a bad idea. However, my plan is stopped short by the sudden realization that my Paladin has arachnophobia. He didn't have it when we started, but he sure as shit got it after this fight. cause after getting close to dying and having this much trouble with the spiders, he's terrified. They ended up chasing me all the way from the stony field back into the cold plains. If that isn't a deja vu, I don't know what is. But seriously, what is up with these spiders? They hit like a freight train and they tank hammers like they're made of cotton candy. In the end, the spider dies, but dear lord did it take forever to go down. But it was just a sign of things to come. At this point there is just so much stuff everywhere that I need to go 2 steps, 1 hammer to make sure that I can even make it through the stony field. There is nothing but danger there, like wherever I look, danger is up. The only thing that was nice about this stony field was that I ended up finding an armor for the mercenary. After making it through the dark wood, I had picked up on what the game was putting down. Not only was this run hard on normal, it was absolutely fucking relentless on Nightmare, like there was no mercy ever at any point in this run. Every step of the way was a massive struggle. I felt underpowered and weak. Every single boss pack felt like cutting down the head of a hydra, 2 more would pop up immediately. Every level of the tower I was greeted with death, destruction and decay at the door, and it was just gang squad after gang squad trying to get through any of it. Also, hammers in the towers are really bad, like really bad. It's so hard to hit anything. You can swirl them around doors and pillars and stuff, but it's very precise and tedious to do, which is hard when there's like a million things waiting for you. I thought the tower was bad in normal, but Nightmare was just like, well, hold my beer, let's show them how it really can suck. Upon entering level 3, everything just feels like a meme at this point and a trap. There's just so much at the doors and nowhere feels safe. And level 4 is truly where the game just went like, how are you still alive? Stop being that. It opens up with a bunch of souls supported by a low resist casting group of knights, and the second boss pack of souls is just camping at the door, forcing me to lure them out one by one. And slowly but surely I do make it through. Level 5 actually looks very relaxing at the start, just a cow king and some demons. How bad can it be? It's actually pretty quiet compared to the rest of the levels, so I decide to start running through and just clearing things as I go. I've been doing that for the entirety of Nightmare. I end up making it through the door and am greeted by a group of might cow kings. I try to run back so I have some room to work with, but end up getting blocked by the stupid demon that I should have just killed. And the cows corner me. There's only one way out of this, it's a save and quit. There's no way I survive this ever, so I leave the game. Did I mention? This was a 45 minutes counters run, and I failed it at the very end. I'm not very happy right now, but I'm gonna play on, so I go in for my second round, because it can't be worse, right? Of course it can. I'm greeted by souls again, followed up by champion dolls. And just look what's behind this little door. That is a death wish waiting to happen. And did you know there is a reason you usually don't encounter souls in the tower? It's because it's really cramped and miserable. They're also pretty hard to see even in most areas. I never even realized how sneaky those things are until I did this run. And started getting them everywhere I didn't expect them. So after making it through that level, I am greeted by souls again, but at this point I'm just so used to it. I just lure everything past the door and deal with it one by one. I even end up making it to the counters and she drops me a doll rune, which makes me very happy because it's the rune I was looking for. And I now have access to a spirit. I don't really want to make it yet though. I don't know if I'll find a weapon or a shield base first, so my plan usually is to just stick it out until I find the first base and then last week the others. But because this run has been insanely difficult, I really want to upgrade my gear. So I'm banking on making it to Act 5 Nightmare for the second base. I end up rolling a 26% spirit, which is less than ideal. And after that I decide to farm some more in normal until I get a bunch of good gear, which you can see here. With the good gear I decide to farm some more levels as well. I feel almost criminally under-leveled for Nightmare. To give some perspective, I'm like level 35, 36 at this point. And I usually go for Nightmare Bale at this point. Like I'm close to there, like I'm either leveling at Eldritch or I'm going for Nightmare Bale. I'm not getting through Act 1 at this point. And I can clear Player's Aid Lister without a problem, which really shows how hard this Nightmare is. Eldritch ends up giving me an insane circlet, a massive upgrade from a lore helm for sure, and the final upgrade to my gear comes from Bale. A +1 shield with deflecting and 38 all res is absolutely bonkers. With all of this gear I finally dare to venture further into Nightmare, where I end up finding a base for my spirit, a 25 resist all heraldic shield. All I need to do now is to make it to Larzakon Nightmare, which will be easy of course. It's not like this is by far the hardest run I've ever done in my life of this game or anything. While I'm casually making my way through the jail, I'm surprised by a door jumping out of the dark and into my life total. But I do end up making it all the way up to level 4, where I am of course, what else, greeted by souls immediately. And Andariel still just isn't even close to being a threat. So to Act 2 we go. The Far Oasis is a nice calming area filled with just some more Deadlords and Conkers. Oh, and the fanaticism can't be forgotten. Is it really even an area without some fanaticism Deadlords? Like it's like a piece of a puzzle missing or something, you know? You need like the scenery, the music, the fanaticism Deadlords. It all just makes things very nice. And I end up getting the greatest maggot lair ever. I'm just so happy every time I see those idiots blowing themselves up. It makes life so much easier to know that there's at least one problem in the room that will solve itself. And the maggot lair is just one of the most enjoyable areas in this run, because you can just go in one enemy at a time, instead of having to work your way through truckloads and truckloads of enemies at every single turn. I end up using a Ral rune to get an amulet. If only it was a +1 Paladin skills, but still 19 FCR is amazing, so I equip it. My resists are still very good, and that is all thanks to the shield and the boots. I also like the perfect 420 mana and regenerate, because it's a funny number, get it? The Palace Cellar gives me a helmet for my mercenary, and after picking it up I do have to retreat a bit here. There's just too much stuff here to deal with, so I need to stretch it out. You can also really start the amount of damage things are starting to deal. I would be fine with just one of these groups hammering away at my life total. With all of them it's adding up for sure. It just keeps getting worse and worse in the Talrasher's tomb. I walk into a random room only to be greeted by not one but 2 boss packs of archers in there. And so many flayers that I was seriously starting to worry it might crash the game. My life total at this point basically resembles a flickering light in how quick it drains and fills again. I barely make it out of the room, but it's just too much and too much risk. I need to leave the game and try again. On my second attempt I end up finding a Lum rune, which I can use for a smoke if I end up needing it. After that I get my much needed break in the fight with Duriel. I wish it lasted longer, but after remembering to actually put in the rune for the mercenary, we go back into the hellscapes that are the Spider Forest, where we are immediately greeted by cursed Deadlords again. This is starting to feel strangely comforting at this point. I think I'm actually getting used to how insanely hard this run is. I still need to take a break after an hour though. Shit's intense. I'll be very glad when I get to Mephisto. I'll go and farm a ton of gear that will help me out immensely. I can't wait to find like a Viper Magi or something. I'm gonna be so happy. In the Flayer jungle you can really see how far the wheels are falling off it, my life total just randomly dropping a bunch, and I didn't even realize what happened. But disaster struck. I hadn't even seen what hit me until I opened the run in my video editor. Apparently there were dolls all over the place and I legit just hadn't seen them. So after all the insane combinations of monsters I encountered, all the random bullshit the game threw at me, I ended up dying to the most typical thing ever. Some dolls. This randomizer was a lot of fun though, although it felt like running into a brick wall for Nightmare, and I'm actually nervous about how hard hell would be. But be my guest, if anyone wants to try it, I included a link in the description down below. So I want to thank everyone for watching, and I hope to see everyone in the next one. And I want to once again thank Mapron for making this, because it's one of the coolest tools I've seen in years for this game. Thank you and have a good night. Bye bye.